is Suzie Lee Cooks, and I am going to make sticky pork belly bites in bao buns, and I'm going to show you how to make bao buns as well. You'll need a pot, one spring onion chopped up, 1 inch of fresh ginger peeled and then sliced, 1 stock cube, and then 2 cloves of garlic sliced, peeled and sliced as well, into the pot. Then 500 milliliters of water, and then pork belly bites. So I have got these as strips from the butcher and have the rind removed, so the hard skin. If you're going to keep it, you can make it into crackling, peel it off and then put it into the oven, but otherwise you just want it without the tough skin on top. So that's it, and I've chopped it into wee chunks then. Make sure it's fully immersed in the water, and I'm going to have some help now in here. It's now come up to the boil, and you will be able to see that there is a layer of what looks like foam, and this is scum as you call it, and that's the impurities that have come out of the meat. So what I'm going to do is use a spoon. Once you've removed as much of the scum as you can, reduce the heat. See you in an hour and a half. Had a technical glitch there, so it didn't record some of my recipe. So what I've got in here is 375 grams of plain flour. I then had 175 mils of warm water, and then 1 tablespoon of sugar and 1 packet of yeast, which is 7 grams. I then let it dissolve, stirred it around, and it developed a lovely frothy kind of top, and that's when you want to use it. That means that the yeast has bloomed and it makes the dough rise, obviously. So I poured that in and added half a teaspoon of rice wine vinegar, or you can use white wine vinegar or even just white vinegar. Then 1 teaspoon of vegetable oil. I've used olive oil because I don't have anything else here. And as you can see, I'm in different surroundings at the moment, just in my in-laws holiday home. I've mixed that all together and created this very rough dough. And it doesn't look great, but what you're going to do now is leave it for about 15 minutes to a maximum half an hour to auto glaze. And what that means is the gluten will develop in this time, and it will actually soften this dough. So when we come back to it, it'll actually be more springy and soft to work with and easier to knead. So I'm going to put a lid on it. I'm going to put a plate, but you can put cling film or tin foil, leave it in somewhere nice and toasty and warm, and then we'll get back to it and we will then knead it and develop them into the bao buns. After your auto glazing period, the dough should be lovely and soft. Oil your work surface and start to knead the dough. This will take about 10 minutes by hand till you get a lovely smooth, round, soft dough. Otherwise, if you're going to use a machine to knead it, then it'll take about 5 to 8 minutes, but it's a really good arm workout. Once you've done that, coat it in a little bit of oil and put back into the bowl with a lid. Okay, dough has now doubled in size. It is lovely and soft. So let's roll this out. It's lovely and soft. I'm going to deflate it and knead it literally so it comes back into a firm kind of sausage log shape. I'm now going to divide this into 6 pieces. So I'm going to go half, and then thirds. I'm going to create some tension on the surface, so I'm trying to round these off again. It's much easier to work with a larger dough ball like my sourdoughs. So it just takes a little bit of time and practice. Okay, I have cut up some baking paper. Okay, non-stick baking paper or parchment paper into little squares, rectangles, and this is so that when I roll this out, then it can be put onto this, and it's easy then to transfer onto a steamer. So the other things that you'll need are a rolling pin and a steamer. So I have treated myself to a bamboo steamer. It's expensive, but I've never owned one, so I wanted one. Anyways, you can use a traditional double steamer, just like a pot with then another pot on top with holes in it with a lid, or else if you don't have that, you can create your own. So if you have a wok or if you have a gigantic pot, then what you can do is you can stack a bowl at the bottom, line it with a bit of kitchen roll at the bottom, and then put a plate on top, an oven-proof plate that can withstand heat and steam, and then you can place these flattened Bao Bun shaped rolls into it and then put the lid on, and that's how you would steam it, but I'll go through that. So next stage with these Bao Buns, I am not in my kitchen, so I have some oil here and I have a bit of tissue or kitchen roll because I don't have a brush, but this will suffice, and this is just to grease them and make it easier to transfer onto the baking parchment, and also that they don't stick onto themselves. So I will explain. So what we're wanting to do is lightly grease this on both sides, and then we're rolling it out. Okay, as you can see, I am trying to make them flat and obviously even in depth. You can give it a good tug on either side. I am just going to create a kind of oval shape. That's what I'm really looking for. And it's about 4 to 5 mil in depth. So once you've done that, I make sure that it's as even as I can be, because what you're going to do is then fold it over and then they will puff up. So then we grease this a little bit further inside, and then on the outside, and this also stops it from drying out. It gives it a lovely, lovely sheen. I'm going to put this on the bit of parchment paper. So I'm going to lightly grease this and put that on, and then I'm just going to make sure I've covered all the edges and surfaces that I can see, and making sure there's enough oil inside that this doesn't completely stick together and it's welded onto itself. But it's as easy as that. That's it. So I'm just going to roll out my others. Now for the steamer. Put some water in your pot or your wok or the steamer that you have. Put it up full heat. Wait for the water to boil, and then that's when you can transfer the steamer on top, and then you'll be able to steam them. So it should take about 12 minutes for it to rise and for the dough to cook. So what I am going to do now is place my lovely Bao Buns in here. I can only really fit about 4 in at a go, but I'm going to do 3 just to give it a chance to rise and have space so they're not crowded on top of each other. You may have to overlap the paper. So here you go. So this is what it looks like. And let this come to a roaring boil. You can see the steam coming. Then plonk your steamer on top. Or put your plate into your big pot and put the lid over it. And another key tip is, so you don't get soggy bread, is to place some parchment paper on top. And that protects it from obviously the condensation dripping on it, and yeah, it just is very nice when you get soggy bread. So we'll wait for that to boil and then we'll move on to the next stage. So that's 3 of them already steamed. I've got the other 3 in there. Once they are finished, I'm going to take them off the heat, but I'm going to return these back into the bamboo steamer just to keep warm, and so they're still nice and fresh and fluffy. But you can actually freeze these. They freeze really, really well, so let them cool to room temperature or cold, obviously. Wrap them up really well and put them in the freezer, and then you can just defrost them, and they are perfect. Really, really delicious, and you can steam them again from frozen, and they will take about 15 minutes, and they're just delicious. Now on to the pork belly. I have extracted the pork belly from the lovely stock that it was boiling away in. It took nearly 2 hours for it to be super soft and tender, but yet again, if you're impatient, cut them smaller into smaller cubes and it will take less time to render down. I am now going to fry these off and brown them first before I start adding the lovely sticky sauce. So for the sticky sauce, you will need 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. I've also added 2 teaspoons of rice wine vinegar. It gives it a kick. Yet again, if you don't have that white wine vinegar, even white vinegar, but you may want to adjust it, that might be slightly too sharp. And then for our spices and flavouring as well, we've got 1 large garlic minced, about 1 centimetre of fresh ginger peeled back and then minced again and chopped up very finely, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of honey, and some chilli, but that's optional. You don't have to add that if you don't want to, but I just like a little bit of heat in this. So I'm going to fry off the pork belly, and then I'm just literally going to add all of these ingredients into this little jug. Give it a good stir and toss it in with the pork belly. So let's do this. So honey in, and add everything else. And there you go, it's like a very chunky marinade. Add oil to your pan and make sure it is super hot before you add in your pork. And see movement on the oil, and it's starting to bubble on the surface. If you want to test it out, I'm going to drop a little bit of my ginger into that. Yep, it's frying off nicely. So I'm now going to toss these in. What we're doing here is we are just giving it a nice caramelization and golden brown colour, and it also draws out even more flavour in the pork belly, and it just helps then get the lovely sticky sauce coating around it as well. Once all the surfaces are nice and golden brown, then you can add in the marinade. Time for the sauce. Yet again, this is going to splatter, so watch out, stand back. reduce the heat now and let this simmer away for about 5 minutes, so it's nice and thick and reduced, and the colour will have intensified due to the sugars in the honey and the brown sugar caramelising along with the soy sauce. Give it a wee taste, and if it needs a little bit more salt or pepper, or you want more sharpness or sweetness, add in what you think, whether it's honey, whether it's then a little bit more vinegar for sharpness, or chilli, or as I said, salt if you think that it just seems quite bland, then please do. But I do think with the pork belly having been cooked in the stock for so long, it should have the right amount of salt, but I'm going to taste anyway. No, genuinely think for me this is great, and there's a good sweet and sour kind of sharpness to it. Yeah, it's got a good kick to it as well with the right amount of chilli.